In the NFL, some teams just feel different. They've got their own sound, their own look, a connection with their city that's just on another level. And today, we're going to dive into the story of one of those teams, the Seattle Seahawks. And really, to get the Seahawks, you have to start right here, with the number 12. Now, that's not for some legendary quarterback or a Hall of Famer. Nope. It's for the 12th man, the fans. I mean, this one gesture tells you everything you need to know about the soul of this franchise. It's the key to their whole story. So let's rewind. How did this whole thing even get started? Well, our story begins way back in the mid-1970s, up in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, so at first glance, this timeline looks pretty standard for a new team, right? But there are a couple of really cool details here. First off, the name Seahawks, that was picked by the public from like 1,700 different ideas. But the really wild part is that conference switch. They spent 1 year in the NFC, then immediately hopped over to the AFC. They're the only team to have switched conferences twice. Kind of tells you they were going to do things their own way from the very beginning. And this was their first look. That original logo wasn't just some random drawing of a bird. It was actually inspired by a Kwakwakakwa transformation mask, which is this incredible piece of indigenous art from the Pacific Northwest. So right away, the team had an identity that was totally connected to the region's culture. But after a pretty good start, things got rocky. I mean, really rocky. By the 90s, the whole franchise and really professional football in Seattle was basically on life support. It's honestly hard to imagine now, but the team was struggling badly. They completely bottomed out in 1992 with a 2-14 record. It doesn't get much worse than that, and the future looked incredibly dark. So this is where the story almost ends. You've got the owner at the time, Ken Bring, who actually tries to move the team. He literally packed up the trucks and started moving operations down to Southern California. The city, as you can imagine, was furious. But then a local hero steps up. Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, buys the team, and his number one promise was simple, but it was everything. The Seahawks were staying right here in Seattle. Okay, so the team is saved. Crisis averted. Now what? Well, with Paul Allen in charge, things got serious. The goal wasn't just to stick around anymore. The goal was to win a championship. So they bring in Coach Mike Holmgren, and all the pieces start clicking into place. They move back to the NFC, they get a brand new stadium, and they start winning. A lot. In 2005, they had their best season ever. They finally won a playoff game after 21 years, and they made it to their first ever Super Bowl. Now, it was a tough loss to the Steelers, and let's just say a lot of fans are still pretty salty about some of the calls in that game. And the guy leading the charge on the field for that whole run was this man, quarterback Matt Hasselbeck. He was tough, he was reliable, and he was really the face of the franchise that put the Seahawks on the national map for the very first time. So that first Super Bowl trip was huge. It set the stage. But what came next? Well, that would define this team forever. This was the Pete Carroll era, with a defense that was just punishing, and a nickname that made offenses all over the league very, very nervous. The Legion of Boom. And listen, that was so much more than a clever name. It was a philosophy. This secondary was just historically great because they completely broke the mold. They had cornerbacks with like linebackers and safeties that could hit like a truck. They would just physically bully receivers at the line of scrimmage and throw off the timing of the entire offense. It was beautiful to watch. And while the defense was making all that noise, the offense had its own force of nature. His name was Marshawn Lynch, but you probably know him better as Beast Mode. He was the engine of that team, and in a playoff game in 2011, he created a moment that literally shook the city. And you have to see the numbers to believe it. People call it the Beast Quake. This wasn't just a great run, it was an act of pure will. 67 yards. He broke 9 tackles, 9, against the defending Super Bowl champs. And the fans in the stadium went so wild, so completely bananas, that the noise and the stomping actually registered on seismographs in the area. I'm not making that up. A football play caused a small earthquake. How cool is that? All of that energy, all of that dominance, it all came to a head on the biggest stage imaginable, Super Bowl XL8. And they were going up against a Denver Broncos offense, led by Peyton Manning, that had just set pretty much every record in the book. The final score was 43-8, but honestly, it wasn't even that close. This was a demolition. It was a coronation. That legendary Broncos offense, it got completely smothered from the very first snap of the game. This was a statement to the entire world of football, and it brought the Lombardi Trophy home to Seattle for the very first time. In running the show for the offense was the cool, calm, and collected quarterback, Russell Wilson. He took them to back-to-back Super Bowls, winning one, and really cementing this period as the absolute greatest in the team's history. So, they got the championship. But what's the lasting legacy of the Seahawks? Well, you can see it in their style, and you can absolutely feel it in their fan culture. I mean, just look at how their look has changed over the decades. You had the classic 80s feel, then the move to that darker Seahawks blue in the 2000s, and then, boom, the Nike redesign in 2012 that gave us the action green and wolf gray that defined that championship era. And when you put them side by side like this, it's pretty stark. The junk from that classic 1976 uniform to the one they won the Super Bowl in, it's like a visual history of the team's entire journey, from a hopeful expansion team to an absolute powerhouse. And they are not afraid to get bold with their look either. You've got the all-action green jerseys, which people have opinions about, and the throwback uniforms that fans just went nuts for. It's all part of the story. But in the end, everything comes back to the fans. This quote about the Beastquake, it's more than just a fun fact. It is concrete proof of the real physical impact the 12th man has on the game. And hey, they've got the receipts to prove it. In 2013, the fans set a Guinness World Record for the loudest crowd roar ever recorded at an outdoor stadium. They hit 137.6 decibels. That isn't just noise, that's a weapon. That is a game-changing advantage. So when you look at the whole picture, from the cultural logo to almost being moved, from the Legion of Boom to the Beastquake, the Seahawks have packed a lifetime of drama and glory into just a few short decades. It really leaves you with one big question. What on earth will the next chapter hold for this one-of-a-kind team and its earth-shaking fans?